Good evening, ladies and gentlemen that are here with us tonight in the hall, and good evening to everyone watching on television. Welcome to this community workshop on the Takoma Metro. I'm Doug Barry, Councilman for Ward 6 and Mayor Pro Tem. Joining me up here are my colleagues, Councilmember Siemens, Councilmember Wright, Councilmember Snipper, Councilmember Robinson on the end there. And Mayor Williams is in the audience this evening observing, and I'm sure we'll hear from him later. And we also have Matt Larsen of Justice Sustainability Associates, our city attorney, Suzanne, who's in the audience there, and we'll be hearing from her later, and up here at the table with us, Deputy City Manager Ludlow. Why did we convene the meeting tonight? Well, since 1999, the City Council has been concerned about plans for the development of the Takoma Metro property and its possible impacts on the Takoma Park community. At each decision point about the project, the City Council has adopted a resolution expressing its position. It's time again for the Council to express its position, again, based on developments that have occurred over the last several months. For example, in November, the WMATA board voted to approve the sale of the property to EYA, the developer, for a townhouse development. The sale of the property must be approved by the FTA because the federal government granted the land to WMATA for the Metro Rail system. A decision on that approval may be issued at any time. Also, EYA is in the process of preparing its submission to the DC Development Review process. Development review processes involve opportunities for public comment. And if the city of Takoma Park wishes to weigh in at these hearings, our position should be up to date. Since our last adopted resolution in September of 2007, we've had an election, and now we have two new council members who are sitting with me here at the table this evening. Given all this, the council asked that a facilitated process be set up to help solicit public comment as we establish our position for the next phase. What questions does the Council want answered tonight? What position should the City Council take regarding the Takoma Metro development is perhaps the most important one. In addition, we can have the following potential responses. Number one, do nothing further regarding the proposal. Spend no more City of Takoma Park staff time or money on the Metro project. Number two, take a position on the proposal, such as continue just commenting on transit access issues, or take a position that also comments on other aspects of the development plan. If you want us to continue to take a position on the proposal, what steps should we take to see that our position gets results? Can we testify at public hearings? Work with the developer and the DC government staff to encourage a plan that advances the interests of Takoma Park. Take legal action opposing the development if the council determines that legal action has merit and the costs of such action are not likely to be larger than we can afford. Take legal action opposing the development even if the costs might be high, providing the council determines that legal action has merit. How will the council use the survey results that you got on the way in here and may already have received in the mail and looked at and filled out and returned to us? The City Council is interested in seeing the comments submitted from the public on the questionnaires. We know the survey is not statistically accurate, but we're interested in hearing your insights and knowing what kinds of issues you are concerned about. The comments on the surveys will be part of the information we consider and as we establish our up-to-date position on the project. What are the next steps for the Council? The Council will hear your comments tonight. Receive the report from our facilitator, Justice and Sustainability Associates, and review the comments from the questionnaires and any other communications we receive from you on the matter. Mayor Williams will set a date for a Council work session to discuss this information and our thoughts on the matter. During the work session, the Council will identify points that we will want to see in the text of an up-to-date resolution. A draft resolution will be prepared for consideration at a subsequent Council meeting. At the council meeting, there will be opportunity for public comment on the resolution, and the council will vote on the resolution. Once a resolution is adopted, it will provide direction to the council and to the city staff on what steps to take regarding this matter. So with those introductory comments framing the issues that we will discuss tonight, I will turn it over to Matt, our facilitator. Thank you.
Councilmember, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Larsen. I am a facilitator with Justice and Sustainability Associates. We are a facilitation mediation firm based in the district. We specialize in facilitating public discussions and public participation processes on land use issues. We were hired to both be the impartial facilitator tonight here to try to get as many people involved in dialogue as possible, but also to design the public participation process. I proposed doing the survey as a way to get the input from a wide variety of community members here. And I want to just first, before we go on, to say I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. I know this is an issue that has a long history in the community, and there has been rich and robust public participation on this issue, a variety of opinions, and I want to respect that and honor that tonight. I know that there's a lot that has come before me, but we're here right now, and so I've been directed by the City Council to help facilitate a discussion on a series of questions about what to do moving forward. And I welcome, this is an open forum, so people are free to make any statements that they want about their opinions about what the City Council should do or what is going on at the Metro. But from the City Council's perspective, they will get the most value from this meeting if they can hear some of the answers to the questions that Councilman Berry has described and that are described generally on the survey. I'm going to propose a few ground rules for the question and answer session tonight. My first interest is that everyone who wants to speak has the opportunity, so I'm going to ask that people limit their first comment to 3 minutes, and then if everyone's had a chance to speak, we will allow follow-up questions and for perhaps a minute apiece, and we'll see if everyone's had a chance to speak, perhaps then we can have more of an open dialogue, but I want to make sure that everyone gets their statement on the record first. We're going to have a timekeeper. That's the red light there you see. It'll be green when it's your time, then yellow when you have 30 seconds left, then red. And we ask that you raise your hand when you want to speak, and I'll come around to different parts of the room and bring the mic to you so you can make your comments. This is different than a traditional public hearing where people just line up and one after another speak. We want to encourage more of a dialogue here tonight. It's important to note that this is one event in a process, that tonight is a listening and learning opportunity for the City Council members to hear the opinions of the community and then to consider those and to come back in other council hearing and other forums to present a city position. So to the extent that there's answers, it's not the city taking a position tonight, but perhaps City Council members asking clarifying questions, making sure they understood comments that the community makes. We're going to ask that everyone have just one person speak at a time. This serves two reasons. One, it shows respect for the speaker, and two, if you want people on TV to hear what you're saying, you have to speak into the microphone. So I think it's in everyone's interest that we speak in one time and we just speak into the microphone. Otherwise, the cameras won't pick up the sound. Following my presentation, Suzanne Ludlow will give following my comments here, Suzanne Ludlow will give a presentation about the background issues, and then we will kick off the questions and answers session. Again, thank you for your attendance this evening. I'm looking forward to a good discussion. And I'd like to hand it over to Suzanne.
Thanks, Matt. Welcome. I'm so glad you're all here this evening. I'm Suzanne Ludlow. I'm the Deputy City Manager here for the City of Takoma Park. When I first started working on issues related to the Takoma Metro, I was a planner here, and so the time has gone by. I'd like to give some background information about the Takoma Metro and the proposal that is more or less on the table by EYA, a developer of townhomes. And so I want to go through this so that for those who haven't lived and breathed it. We're on pretty much on the same page in terms of background information. And I've got two boards with me this evening. This one here is an aerial photograph of the area at the Takoma Metro. These are the Takoma Metro train tracks. This is the D.C. Maryland line, and this is Eastern Avenue right here. And this is the Takoma Metro property. This property is bounded by Carroll Street, Cedar Street, and Eastern Avenue, and the train tracks. Carroll Street becomes Cedar Street underneath the tunnel that goes into the other side in D.C. I also have on this is the main entrance to the Takoma Metro here by the underpass. This is the entrance to the elevator tunnel and the elevator. Currently, buses primarily come in here, and they let people off here. They can go around the jug handle. They can park up here, and some ride-on buses come in from Eastern Avenue. Currently, the Takoma Metro has 9 bus bays. 4 of them are designated for ride-on buses, 4 for WMATA buses, and 1 is an extra one for layover space. The ride-on buses have fairly heavy use of the 4 bus bays that they currently operate. Although it's all in D.C., ride-on does have an important role, obviously, as a Montgomery County bus system at the Takoma Metro. The parking lot is this area here, and currently it has approximately 150 parking spaces. It includes 6 handicap parking spaces. Some of the spaces are kiss and ride, and I think 4 now are for flex car kinds of, I forget, is it all flex car now? But those are the numbers of spaces, and for those of you who use it, you know that it's a complicated parking time system such that it's not supposed to be all-day parking. This property consists of 6.7 acres approximately. 3.5 acres of the property is green space with trees. WMATA has a joint development program. It has goals of partnering with private entities to locate uses so that more people use the metro system and to gain money for the metro system by selling or leasing land that it feels it doesn't need. In 1999, EYA submitted a proposal for purchasing land at the Takoma Metro for a townhouse development. And their proposal was to purchase a lot of the land for this development. And because the current zoning has commercial zoning on the more southern side near Carroll Street and residential kind of apartment zoning on the Eastern Avenue side, their proposal, their interest was for a townhouse development, which requires a planned unit development style, which has a different zoning process to go through. Since that proposal was first announced, Takoma Park has been very interested in the issue, and the City Council has passed 7 resolutions so far related to the Takoma Metro. And one of the things that we have in your package is a copy of those 7, so you can read and see the kinds of comments that the City Council has made over the years. For the last few years, the major point that the Takoma Park City Council has made has been expressing their concern that access to transit at the Takoma Metro would be hindered by selling most of the land for development. And they have argued to WMATA that they should not sell off the land until it's certain that there's enough room for transit use now and in the future for both the Takoma and the Takoma Park communities. The Takoma Park City Council has actively opposed the sale of the property because it determined that the size and the configuration of the land that would remain after the sale would be insufficient for a well-designed transit facility currently, and certainly in terms of if transit need increased in the future. Nevertheless, on November 8, 2007, the WMATA board voted to approve the sale of the property to EYA for the development. As was mentioned, the sale of the land must be approved by the Federal Transit Administration. And the townhouse and site development plan must go through the DC land use approval process. Because the proposal is for a planned unit development in a historic district, approval is needed by both the DC Zoning Commission and the DC Historic Preservation Review Board. And in your package of information is some information provided by the DC Office of Planning on the processes that are involved in those two land development processes. The sale of the property would not be finalized until the FTA, the DC Zoning Commission, and the DC Historic Preservation Review Board all approved the project. As I mentioned, the Takoma Park City Council has expressed concern primarily on the transit access issues such as the type of development, preservation of green space and trees, connectivity of the business district, and environmental impacts have not been the focus of the City Council's deliberations to this point. Now, EYA has prepared several different concept plans for their development. The one that we have here is from 2006, and it's pretty much the one that went through the WMATA board and its approval in November. And I'd like to go through it. I will indicate that minor modifications were made just before it got approved by the WMATA board to allow for some handicap drop-off. EYA is currently in the process of preparing their submission to the DC review process. And we understand that they've been meeting with different officials to check some ideas that they have for changing their plan. This plan that is here and what the WMATA board approved of is shown on this large plan, and you have a copy in your package. It would provide for a fairly significant change to the property. The first thing is that the hillside that comes down from the tracks, between the sidewalk and the tracks, would be cut approximately in half with a retaining wall, and the bus bays and sidewalks would move closer to the tracks and aligned with the tracks rather than, as it currently does, going up to through the middle of the property. The parking area would be moved further along the tracks to the rear of the property. Townhouses would be built along Eastern Avenue and Cedar Street. The proposal here shows approximately 85 townhouses. The entrance to the parking area would be moved very close to the first apartment building that's here on Eastern Avenue. And the entrance to the bus bays would be moved very close to the metro entrance. As you know now, there's currently a fairly wide plaza area at the metro entrance. This would be cut more than half and closer to about 35 or 40%, such that there's very little space at the entrance, and there is a grade issue once you do that cut. The buses would then be entering closer to that entrance. The 3.5 acres of green space would be replaced with about 1 acre of a village green, and there's a very convoluted system of a circle for transportation of both buses and cars. The City of Takoma Park had expressed the following concerns about the transit facilities. When we looked at and had examinations of the experts from various bus agencies, the determination was that in the future 12 bus bays would be needed on the site. We currently have 9, but knowing that our need for mass transit is going to increase, we thought that going with what the experts had said for 12 bus bays was important. We were very concerned that there would be safe and convenient access for disabled riders. We were concerned that bus riders, bike riders, pedestrians, kiss and ride, and taxi cab users would have more difficult access to the site. we wanted to ensure that we kept the 150 parking spaces. It's well used as it is, and the original proposal was to cut the number of spaces approximately in half. The proposal that did get approved by WMATA shows about 121 parking spaces in a two and a half story garage in this location, with the remaining parking spaces sprinkled in front of the various townhouses. The townhouses also have two-car garages. In concern for people saying, well, you shouldn't have two-car garages at a metro station as a smart growth proposal, they said, well, potential buyers could ask for just one garage. We had also had a good amount of concern about traffic impacts of development on this site on the surrounding neighborhoods. Now, as you know, probably, people have expressed many concerns about the site, but the Takoma Park City Council has not been taking positions on these other development issues. And so some of the questions that we've heard are, should there be business or retail space at the site? How densely developed should the site be? And on this, there have been some interesting proposals. Some people feel that having housing here is appropriate, but it should be higher, or it should be concentrated on areas that were already paved and not have this arrangement. People want to know what the buildings in sight would look like, and they have opinions about it. We've heard concern about environmental issues such as stormwater controls, air pollution, noise. There's interest in green building techniques. There are people who are very strongly supportive of keeping the green space and the trees. People kind of wonder if there's green space, should it just be kind of a passive space as it is now, or something that's more active? This has more of a development with like a gazebo. One person contacted me wanting a soccer field, so we have all kinds of ideas out there. One of the questions for you is, is housing needed in the area? And one of the things that's on this aerial shows some of the new development that has gone around the Takoma Metro. These three properties here are new housing developments adjacent to the Metro. This is an office building. Echo Park is kind of on hold, but it is approved for housing development. And the Jamal property, I know it's been approved for something, or it's in the process, but there certainly has been development around the property. The question is, should there be housing on the Takoma Metro property itself? And then there's been questions raised, do we have an opinion about if it should be affordable housing or high-end housing or a mix? And the impacts of those on property taxes and that kind of thing. As I mentioned, there have been concerns about what would be the traffic impacts. One of the points on this particular plan is that Eastern Avenue is narrowed slightly on this plan. And given the bus traffic and other traffic that might be generated from this site, there may be impacts that negatively affect the community. So we've had lots of comments over the years. I've had many people say, well, why aren't you talking about the green space? Why aren't you doing these things? And people, as I said, have many different concerns and thoughts. But the position of the City Council has been to focus on the transit access at the site. And that was primarily, that's for several reasons. Obviously, it's very important for Takoma Park's economy and community that we have access to mass transit. But the owner of the property was WMATA. It was in the WMATA decision chain as to whether or not to sell the property. They have made that decision, and this project is now is beginning the DC development review process. So if the council can decide a couple things. One is it can say, gee, we did our best shot and we're not going to do anything more. We need to put our energies elsewhere. Another possibility is to say, yes, we feel like we should continue to have a position about the Takoma Metro, and we're going to continue to emphasize transit access. Or they can say we're going to continue to access transit access, but we also have interest in other topics that the community has expressed to us. It's a common thing for the Takoma Park City Council to make comments on development proposals, even when they're not within our city limits, because of the effect, because in this case we actually have Takoma Park residents looking right directly on the property. There's a number of reasons that the council may choose to make other kinds of positions about the development. So once let's say the city council takes a position, comes up with a new resolution, then it's how do you implement that? A common process is to testify at DC public hearings, which there will be several. Another common practice is to try persuasion or working with the various entities to get the position implemented through the developer or through the DC staff or through other mechanisms. There are options, perhaps, of taking legal action opposing the development on some or portion of the issues related to the Tacoma Metro. And obviously, whenever you take a position on legal action, you have to determine what's the chance of success and how much will it cost, and all of those things are of concern to the council. While all this is going on, FTA is considering whether to approve the sale, and EYA is working on their revised application, and will be submitting it to the DC Office of Planning. So I wanted to go over those background pieces of information. We've had lots of information provided to you. We have tons of information on the city's website that we urge you to look at. And I'm available for any questions that you might have. One of the things that's in your package is a sheet of contact numbers and information. You can send comments to the City Council. You can send comments to me. You can contact individual council members individually. But we do want to hear from you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, I'm very glad you're here this evening. We're going to turn this over to the question and answer period. And Matt, it's all you.
Thank you, Suzanne. For those who recently arrived, welcome. A quick reminder of what the ground rules are for this question and answer session. The meeting is scheduled until 8:30. Our primary interest is that everyone gets a chance to speak. Hopefully we can have as much of a dialogue as possible. To do that, the ground rule that I propose is to have everyone get a chance to speak at least once for a maximum of 3 minutes. And then if there's still time before 8:30, if people want to do follow-up comments and no one else wants to talk, we can do those for 1 minute apiece. I will hold the meeting open past 8:30 if there's people who still want to speak who haven't spoken first. And we ask that if you want to speak, you raise your hand. I'll come over and bring you the mic. It's important that we have one person speak at a time, both so that people can hear and be heard, and also so the cameras can pick up the sound. Like to kick it off, and I see a hand there, and I'll just go and see your hand, and there's going to be more hands that I can call at once, but I will get everybody, and I'll be skipping throughout the room. So I saw Mr. Grimes here. Maybe introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Seth Grimes, I'm a resident of Willow Avenue. Not incidentally, I'm also president of the Old Town Residents Association, which is the neighborhood directly opposite the metro station, and I'm an activist with DC, Maryland Neighbors for Tacoma Transit. Thanks, Suzanne, for the introduction and to the council for holding the meeting. I want to reframe the question, if I may, and then ask you a question. I would reframe it as not what position the council should take, but how the council should act on the position that it has consistently taken over many years, as evidenced by the resolutions that are in this packet. And I do want to recognize and thank former Mayor Porter, who joined the audience, for keeping this on the council's agenda over the years. The council has consistently opposed the EYA plan for development based on transit accessibility and safety issues. That, in my mind, is the right tack to take. So the question is how you will continue the path that you've been treading for many years now. I want to ask in particular, there are more resources available than just the City of Tacoma Park and the City Attorney. In particular, we've had excellent support from elected officials ranging from Congressman Chris Van Hollen and the District 20 delegation to the state legislature, from various members of the county council, and I'll recognize Ben Stutz, who is an aide to Valerie Irvin, is here tonight, from Valerie Irvin and other county council members. That support has been enlisted by community members and council members working in parallel in most cases. The county carries a lot of weight because of the presence of ride-on facilities at the station. So what I'd like to ask the council members is, what recent contacts have you had with elected and staff officials outside of the city of Takoma Park? What contacts do you plan to have, or are you contemplating having, in order to enlist the support, which I would urge you to do, of number one, Montgomery County, secondly, of federal elected officials, starting with Chris Van Hollen, but going beyond him, and then further with Governor O'Malley and his administration, given the heavy weight that the state of Maryland plays in WMATA board appointments and the direction that the board takes. So I would ask the council members, including the mayor, if he'd be willing to address that question.
Thank you. Anyone care to respond?
Wasn't my purpose to avoid answering questions. I wanted to get the perspective from the back of the room, which I never get. I've had conversations with a couple county council members, and if I could characterize what they've said, they've encouraged us to work with the developer and the district process, given that WMATA made their decision. That's the message I've heard.
Out of what you heard, what you told them, that their decision.
Councilmember Wright had a response as well.
I've spoken with Delegate Heather Mazur from the District 20 delegation, and she still is in opposition to the proposed development and is helping to contact the federal Maryland delegation to work on this issue at the federal level on our behalf. Bruce and I both were in a meeting where Secretary of Transportation Bakari was there, and given that he had set up the meeting for us to hear what EYA had to say, it was pretty clear that his perspective was that we should work with EYA to have our issues addressed through negotiating and talking to them. So those are the two officials that I've talked to so far. I'll continue to try and talk to both county council members and District 20 delegation, and also directly to Chris Van Hollen's office.
Any other responses? Okay, I see a hand here. Sir, if you could introduce yourself and stand up, please.
Good evening. I'm Jim DeLuigi. I live on 13th Avenue. I'm a board member of Historic Takoma, but I'm here to speak individually. A couple of things in the explanation that were left out. Number one, no one talked about construction duration and its impact on safety issues and transit issues and use of the metro. It's been made very clear that if the plan that's proposed went ahead, disruption would occur for a 2-year time period. That would have a dramatic impact on our neighborhood. Number two, substantial loss of green space, which is now park space, which is the gateway to the city. Substantial change in that will have a negative impact on the gateway to the city, will become more of a transit station look as opposed to a green look. And we all know we are known as Azalea City, a green city. So that impact is magnanimous in my opinion. Third point that was not mentioned, testimony to WMATA. I believe the number was approximately 94 people testifying against. All of those included our mayor at the time and all the city council members at the time, and only 4 in favor. In regard to that testimony, it was not mentioned how WMATA twisted what happened at that meeting in making their recommendations to go ahead. Fourth point I'd like to make is the comment about we gave it our best shot, we don't need to do any more, let's go away. We took that approach in past years. We now have Interstate 95 going through the middle of Takoma Park. I don't know how many of you lived here at the time, but that was the plan. It was going to go through here, it was going to go over by Catholic University, and it would have basically have divided our city in half. Certainly that was more significant than what's going on now with Metro, but not less significant in terms of its impact on how we are perceived as a town. I'm very distraught to see what has happened at Echo Park. We made great touts of what was happening, how beautiful it was going to be in our newsletter. We had drawings of what was going to happen in our newsletter. We had support on it from city planners here in the city and staff. But now that it looks like what it looks like, and I think you all know what it looks like, it doesn't seem that anyone is doing anything about that either. So what is happening is my question. Why are we afraid? Is there anything in the questions that you asked tonight at the beginning about what we could or should do that aren't already covered in the city bylaws that don't allow you to do it? If there's something that does not allow you to do it in the city bylaws, I would like to know the answer to that question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I just want to recognize my colleague, Sharon Colley. She's operating the timer here. So thank you, Sharon. Questions on this side of the room?
There's nothing in any bylaws that says we can't do anything. I think we just want to kind of check back around again now that we've passed one stage in the whole process and make sure that we get more input. But I don't see anybody saying we're not going to do anything.
Sir.
My name's Steve Silverman. My wife and I live a few blocks up on Cedar Avenue. People can correct me if I'm wrong and perhaps a bit cynical, but I've been to some of the public hearings and, you know, everyone has voiced a particular point of view. And as best I can tell, we've been given the back of the hand. It doesn't seem to me that politely protesting anymore will have the slightest effect other than, you know, maybe psychological, making us feel good, but in terms of practical benefit, this seems to be an utterly stacked process. I'd like to know first, do we have any leverage short of litigation, and does litigation give leverage even in the sense of holding this up beyond the point that that it could make people start to actually respond? Because I've seen no constructive response to this point. I'd like to know if there's any prospect of that short of doing something drastic on our part.
Thank you.
We're all behind you. Oh, thanks.
We are pretty unified on this.
I would say that my working assumption is that we could get some changes by working through the process with the district. There have been some minor changes, but I feel like certainly not huge ones, but there have been some. They have kept saying that the next part is where these changes will take place. That's the way the process is set up. What changes there will be, I don't know. I also have the sense that legal options are limited. So, you know, we can sue them, but how effective will that be?
We can't hear.
Will it cause delay to the extent that then there will be some legitimate argument? Because all that's happened so far are the most minor palliatives that, so far as I can see.
I think that's what we have to determine.
Thank you, sir.
You know, I agree with the mayor that if we talk and sit down and negotiate, there's going to be some minor things, but I think they're going to be very minor. There's not going to be significant change to the plan. You're going to see pretty much what's up there happen. I think that litigation options do appear to be somewhat limited, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't pursue them. And I think it depends on how strongly we as a community feel about this. And I think the thing that's going to force people to the table is not only litigation. I think residents will actually have to, in the spirit of Sammy Abbott, take things into their own hand around direct action. And I think that means making it very clear to the developer that there's going to be protests if this goes forward. And when they try to sell those units, there will be people there protesting the sale of those units, and the developer will have to take a haircut. So if the community wants that, it's not only going to be the council up here that's going to force people back to the table through litigation. It's going to take some serious direct action. And we could decide to litigate. I personally lean towards that because I think in litigation, winning the ultimate victory in court is not the only way to succeed.
Other responses? Other questions? Sir. If you please introduce yourself, stand.
Harold Kirk. Since the property is not located in Maryland, therefore Takoma Park, Maryland has no jurisdiction, thereby chances of success are relatively small, I'm assuming, to make WMATA change their mind. My question is, if litigation then has a very small chance of succeeding, as a taxpayer, I don't think I'd want my taxpayer money spent on something that probably doesn't have a reasonable chance to succeed. So are we suggesting that even if the council concludes that there's a very small chance it's going to be successful, is the council still saying they're willing to spend money on litigation to see what happens?
I would say that's yet to be determined.
Okay. I see your hand here, ma'am, and then I see your hand over there. Can you introduce yourself?
Thanks. Cheryl Gross-Glazer. I live on Maple Avenue, and I'm also affiliated with Neighbors for Takoma Transit. I want to know what the legal options are, if you could explain that, and what we could get out of it, and what we would be basing a suit on. Would it be certain legislation or regulations? And who's going to make that determination for the city?
Thank you.
I think that's one for a lawyer to answer.
You should be aware that we're a little cautious about discussing legal options in a public forum. It's a bit like, tipping your hand as to what we might or might not do.
Thank you, Councilmember. I actually was sitting there for that reason rather than up here, but I think it might be helpful to just give people a sense of ways that there are some legal options, just so you have a feel for the impression of them rather than my evaluating them. Obviously, we can weigh in on the FTA application, which has not yet been filed by WMATA, but we can certainly fight that vigorously with all the arguments we've used before. Again, I won't comment on the chances of turning this around under that methodology, but that is one, the first fight we will probably have, assuming the council chooses to make it. The second fight is obviously the administrative process that Susie explained to you, that there's these two different agencies in the district government that will be reviewing the development, and we can certainly not only be involved in that process, which is a legal process, but also appeals that arise out of that process. There's also the question, of course, could we sue WMATA for what it's already decided, or are there suits that might come about more at the time they've made all of the decisions that will come out of the DC planning process? For example, if we have an ADA claim, I would tell you all that it's more likely that that could be sued at the time we know exactly what the details of the plan is going to look like. There isn't anything to sue about at this point. But going down the road, if the kind of plan that they propose we think violates the Americans with Disabilities Act, we could use that as a mechanism for some litigation. So there's going to be things that will happen as things become more concrete, as there's a real case in controversy. I hope that's helpful. I hope you do understand that I don't want to say on camera exactly what the city is planning to do or what its legal options are, but certainly there will be much discussion between our office and the council on those concerns. And I actually know that there's probably many lawyers in the audience because we are Takoma Park and we are DC, and if people have ideas that we maybe haven't thought of, obviously we're open and welcome to those. There's one organization, Historic Takoma, that actually has an understanding with us that we can share in a privileged manner legal strategy, and we invite them to have their lawyer do that with us if they have ideas that they want to air so that the city can consider them.
And if I can just add at this point that we've been joined by Patrick Metz, who's an aide to Delegate Nazir.
Ma'am, if you introduce yourself.
Diana Viditis. I live on Piney Branch Road and have for the last 20 years. I just have a question about the figures. Is this not so much, we're talking about a sale of Metro land. It's my understanding that the sale of the Metro land is about $2 million, and the amount of money that the Metro has agreed to, has obligated to reconfigure the Metro is about $2 million. So this is not really a sale of land, it's a giveaway. Can you correct me if I'm wrong?
Thank you.
That has changed over time. Do you remember the current figure? Because there was an amendment to the contract when they...
7.5 plus $2 million as a sweetener. $7.5 million was the sale price, plus the amendment included a $2 million upfront, flat-out sweetener payment to WMATA in exchange for letting the vote for the sale go through.
Well, it's a little more complicated. In short, the 7.5 had to be used toward all of the construction costs and design costs to make the change. So WMATA wasn't going to benefit by 7.5. That money was going to go back into the changes that EYA was proposing. The sweetener was that said they will definitely get $2 million. 2.5, I'm sorry. I don't remember now, but there is, that was a recent change in the contract, that there was a guarantee of some profit for WMATA.
And I believe one of the reasons for the change was a recognition that there was going to have to be construction of a parking garage, and that raised the cost. And I think also over time, costs went up, and also recognizing that cutting into that hill, that retaining wall, was going to be very expensive. So the original price that was considered, they realized over time that didn't bear any resemblance to the real cost, and therefore it changed.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Were you finished, Mayor?
We're all finished, yes.
I would just add one quick thing in addition to what the mayor said, that we made a very strong case in our brief that went in at the time of the compact hearing, saying that this was ridiculous, that there was no financial benefit to WMATA that would come out of this whole arrangement. And I believe it was after that they changed to show, oh no, there will be this one guaranteed $2 million or $2.5 million.
Ms. Barron wants to make a quick clarifying comment, and then I'm going to move on to this gentleman and this woman who have raised their hands.
Yeah, I'm Sabrina Barron. I'm the president of Historic Takoma. I just want to, what Sue and Bruce were saying is absolutely the case, that when the construction costs for parking facilities and so forth are backed out of the sale price, there was the possibility that WMATA might not even get anything, not a penny of return. And we've heard from a WMATA board member that that's okay. They've done that before, you know, no matter, they don't get any money out of it. So when the contract was amended, there was this sweetener of this payment of 2.5, whatever it is, that they would at least be guaranteed that much return on it. But that's less than 1 day's operating expenses for the WMATA system, less than 1 day's operating expenses. We had a meeting with Councilmember Jim Graham in D.C. That was pointed out to him. If it's $300, he said, we don't care. We want the jingle in our pocket now, and we don't care about transit for the future.
Thank you. This gentleman has hand raised before. Okay. Ma'am?
Yeah, my name's Joanne Wu. I'm on Lincoln Avenue. And I'm feeling a little trepidatious about the financial implications of engaging in legal action. So I just wanted to say that. And I believe in the FTA approval process, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that a federal agency granting a permit also has to get permission from other federal agencies. So they have to go through a NEPA process? No. They don't?
WMATA isn't you or NEPA.
Not WMATA, FTA.
FTA, they don't, unless it's FTA money that goes into the project, they don't have to go through NEPA, Section 106, none of it.
Do you mind if she says that clarification on the microphone?
Our understanding is that this project is immune from the requirements to meet NEPA standards, to meet 4F of the Transit Code, Section 106 of the Historic Preservation Code, anything relating to National Park Service requirements, any of those kinds of things. WMATA has sovereign immunity, and these kinds of things don't apply to that. And that has been confirmed to us by Brian Glenn, who's the director of the Washington, D.C. office of the FTA.
For those who don't know, NEPA stands for the National Environmental Policy Act.
Okay.
So perhaps I'd ask if we get that clarified, if in the FTA process, if the FTA has to comply with that or not.
No, they don't. Okay.
And American with Disability Act issues. So I just want to express that I'd like to have all avenues addressed or investigated rather than just litigation. Thank you.
Just very briefly, there's two different types of FTA approval. One is based on FTA money going into the project, and the other is this situation that we have where it's land that is owned by, that was originally taken by eminent domain by the federal government and is now being sold. In the latter case, there does not need to be ADA approval. There would have been if it was FTA money going into the project.
Any other responses? Sir.
Thank you. I'm Joel Solomon. I live on Cedar Avenue. Thank you for holding this gathering this evening. I want to start by saying those of us who have worked professionally on advocacy issues for many years know it takes a lot of initiative to change things. And I'm concerned that if we just take on its face value work with EYA, when you hear that from people in the state or elsewhere, we really won't make progress. I would encourage the council to actively advocate the positions in the resolutions it's already adopted. There are many ways to do that, working with the state delegation, working with the state, understanding why the state of Maryland has consistently and so quickly supported the development. There's a lot that can be done, but it will take active engagement on the part of the council, and I appreciate the meetings that have been held, but I would encourage the council as a body to actively take the steps it needs to advocate on behalf of the resolutions you've already taken. I would also encourage you to broaden the issues on which you are advocating to include the green space. It has been a consistent and long-term concern of people who have focused on the development. And while, of course, I am concerned as a taxpayer in Takoma Park about the cost of legal action, I would encourage the council to explore seriously all possible legal avenues, which may or may not include litigation, but using the legal counsel in administrative processes with the FTA and anywhere else that it might be successful. Is worth exploring, and I would strongly encourage you to do that and follow all of those avenues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, sir, I see your hand. Sir, did you have your hand up before? Okay. Commissioner.
Hi, my name is Sarah Green. I'm the Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner just over the line in D.C., and the Metro Station is part of the community I represent. I got involved in this thing almost, it seems like, another lifetime ago, when we heard that, you know, this was a done deal, we were told. This was a done deal. I sat in council members' offices. I'm thinking David Catania at the time. Was a council member in the district I very much respect, and he's a gutsy guy, and he said, oh, it's a done deal, it's a done deal. And it's 10 years later, and it's you know, it's not. We all knew, all of us, that the D.C. city government was actively poised to get this. They resent like crazy that we have stood in the way of this thing, that we've just, you know, been like little flies around them for 10 years. You know, I mean, you're greeted with this, oh, this sour nose because they know. So we all knew that WMATA was going to do what WMATA did. So I think that to say, gee, now that WMATA has adopted this, we somehow have to rethink it. I think the reality is we all knew WMATA wanted to approve this. They were poised to do it. They were trying to figure out how to do it to avoid being, you know, obviously illegal about it. So I think we all know what is wrong with this thing. And I personally would not be asking you to just sue them without doing anything else, or to go forth without any intelligence or any subtlety or any elegance. I think that you have to use every single tool available to you to get what you think you need as a city accomplished. And you will decide what that is. I think the transportation issues, as gasoline creeps up, are huge. I think that the green space issue is something I keep hearing from my constituents. I think that is something. There's a lot of issues here, and I'm asking you to use whatever you can, whether it's your influence, whether it's your legal abilities. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a taxpayer, frankly. So for me to say, oh, sure, spend your tax money, it's a cavalier thing for me to say. But rather than looking at it as an expenditure, I think you could look at it as an investment, not only in getting better transit for yourselves and your constituents and your grandchildren, but maybe you won't be looked at as a Rodney Dangerfield anymore. If you succeed in doing this, which I think you can, in partnership with a lot of other people, then perhaps the next time somebody tries to say, don't worry about it, it's a done deal, and you don't like it, perhaps at that point they might think twice. Because I don't think the city of Takoma Park has been given the respect it deserves, and sometimes you may have to demand it in a stronger way.
Thank you.
Okay. Other people would like to comment? Sir. You'll introduce yourself, please?
Oh, my name is James Russell. I'm an architect and a planner. I live on the D.C. side of Tacoma. I've worked for a number of organizations. I've worked for NCPC for 12 years, so I'm pretty used to the process that goes on, that we're going through right now. I want to congratulate the last two speakers, particularly Joel and the lady after him. The thing that concerns me as I listen to the responses of the panel up front is you don't seem to have the same passion in your responses that these people are showing in their questions. Very laissez-faire. I'm sorry to say that, but you seem to have bought the farm on this already. I hate to be direct about it, but Joel was right in a sense that the planning process is in play here. This thing goes to, I deal with DCOP all the time, I deal with the BZA all the time, And I see these processes go through. When people think that something is a done deal, they fail to recognize that this particular project is going to go through a very lengthy review process. The District of Columbia, the Office of Planning, even if they have been well heeled on where and told where to go on this, they can take this plan and they can identify some very key areas in it with a push from this organization, from you guys, as to how to modify this. Yes, you may see something on this site, but I can guarantee you, if you, instead of trying to get everything in the kitchen in there, if you were to identify 3 or 4 major areas that you're going to put your weight behind, not only as a board group, but also as the members of the city who are here, and focus on those things, they will hear you throughout their review process, and they will focus on those things. But it's not just going to take the people here, but you guys are actually the arm that extends cross-jurisdiction. And you can take that message forward. They will listen to you. You have zoning, you have DCOP review to go through. Both groups will probably listen, and in their review process, they will make some modifications. You may not get this thing wiped out, but what you will be able to focus on, or get them to focus on, are a couple of key areas. You probably will come out with something a lot better than what you've got right now. I'm not saying you're going to have this thing stopped, but I do believe, if I know those groups as well as I know them, that they will listen, they will read what's in front of them, and then they will look at that plan and they will focus on those issues. And you may get something, but if you throw your hands up in the air, you'll get nothing. But you guys have to have the same passion that these people here are showing. You may actually come out on relatively better than you think you are on this, given the kinds of response or the position I sense you're taking now. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can just say that I think we've had the passion at times in the past. I think one of the difficulties up to now has been that it would be great if the Board of Zoning Appeals and the various DC groups listen. What we kept running up against was that the WMATA board didn't listen. They didn't read what was put in front of them. We gave them voluminous stuff, and in many cases, they never even saw the pile of stuff that we gave them. So that was very frustrating. So you may not see the passion tonight. There has been the passion at various hearings at WMATA. And one of the reasons that we're doing this is to get feedback from you, and if some of that feedback re-ups our energy on this issue, that's all to the good.
I'll recognize you here, and then there was a hand there, and then ma'am in the front row.
I'm Kathy Porter. I'm the former mayor of the city of Takoma Park. And I just want to say how pleased I am as we enter our 10th year, I believe, of fighting this issue, that we can still get a room full of people with this much energy and this much concern, and there are that many members of the council who are here to hear you. I think it is important for the council to continue to get input from people. One of the things that I discovered in working on this issue for nearly 10 years was that while there continued to be opposition and continued to be concern, the nuances tended to change over time, and I congratulate the council on continuing to go out to the community and get in touch and find out what people want to do at various points in the process. I think that's a very important thing to do. The other thing that I wanted to say is I think that neither the council nor the community will be as effective as both entities working together. And for those of us in the audience to say it's your problem, or for the council to say, which I haven't heard them say to us, this is your problem, either way makes us less effective. And so I really think that we have gotten the victories that we have gotten by working together as a community with the council on this issue, and I'd like to see us continue in that vein. I think it's extremely important. And the other thing, I have not been involved in the discussions that the council has had about legal issues now for several months. but I know what some of the cost figures are, large, and I know what some of the legal considerations have been. And I think that, putting in my pitch as a private citizen, I think that there is a value to the council moving forward on all of the avenues it has, including the legal avenues. That is a very expensive avenue to move forward on, but I think it's a very important one, and it's part of the complement of areas that the council and the community ought to be moving forward on. I like the notion of direct action. There has been some discussion of that in the past, and perhaps some of the entities in the community who have talked about it in the past can help pull some of that together. I think that would be a good idea. But I also think the council ought to move forward on the legal avenues. Winning them is not the only outcome that would be desirable. Even making the effort sometimes has desirable. I mean, Sarah made a good point. I mean, even putting the effort into making the legal arguments and showing up there in court, and they know how much you're paying, although they don't know how much we're paying, because sue is actually a lot less expensive than some of the other lawyers that they have up against us. Better, but less expensive. I think it's worth doing. So I think I would encourage you to continue giving that kind of consideration to legal options, even if not just looking at the winning outcomes, but looking at the other impacts, the other positive impacts it can have.
Thank you. I see your hand in front, sir. There's a couple people ahead of you in line here. This one over here. I'm going to come behind. If you could please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Catherine Tunis. I live on Larsen. I ride the metro every day. And I sense in this room, and as has been, I've sensed in the community for years, a lot of moral outrage at EYA and WMATA for the abuses of the system that they have incurred to date to get where they are in the process, and how they have ignored us and how it's been a problem. And I also am sensing a lot of sort of wanting input and trepidation on the part of the city council and some of the staff. And I'm kind of, you know, also very much agree with Kathy's comment that we should be working together towards this common goal. And I'm kind of wondering from the council, what's your tipping point? What is it you need to know from the citizens in order to help you take action that's going to be effective? And also, what do you see as the kinds of actions that we as citizens could take that would help us reach the common goal of stopping this ill-fated, or hopefully ill-fated and certainly ill-conceived plan?
Thank you.
Something comes to my mind about D.C., about the District of Columbia. You know, there are an awful lot of license plates which have on them taxation without representation. Makes a very strong point. Now, I don't know when home rule will actually come to pass for the district in light of the federal government's intransigence, but there are some parallels, and we can do things. We can do things with you, and we can also do things on our own. We have other ways to make the public face of WMATA uncomfortable. In other words, make WMATA uncomfortable as in public. I'm not saying necessarily embarrass them every day, but to use things wisely, use the power we have wisely. So I don't know if that's a tipping point or not, but that's just what comes to mind.
I don't think there is a particular tipping point for us. I think that we have a legal strategy. It's not one that we can discuss here publicly tonight, and I think that you know, we're looking very carefully at the process, and a couple of the important milestones, which is the decisions are upcoming by the federal government and also the District of Columbia, and we'll be looking at how these procedures are followed. We will be looking for small holes with which to drive trucks through. That's coming up here within the next several weeks. So there really is no tipping point, and I think it's wrong to characterize us as laissez-faire or passionless. None of us would be here tonight if we weren't intensely interested in this issue. and we're going to continue to be interested in the issue. We're now getting input from you, some additional thoughts and ideas, which are great. Certainly it would be better to have a strategy for the district government. We've been rebuffed by a couple of the council folks that we've had discussions with, but it doesn't end there. There are other folks on the D.C. Council that probably we need to reach out to, and we need the help of some of our neighbors on the D.C. side in which to pursue that. We have a couple of representatives tonight from our assembly colleagues. We continue to have close discussions with the governor and the county executive. Nobody's giving up. Nobody's throwing in the towel.
Please introduce yourself. Please introduce yourself.
Nancy Courier, Holly Avenue, Takoma Park, Maryland. I like what this gentleman said about identifying some push points. My particular concern is this area where still buses and cars will interact. I would vote for or nominate completely separating buses and cars. The reason is that I was recently on Wayne Avenue where it almost crosses Colesville, where buses really mix it up with cars, and it was terrifying, utterly terrifying. And if you have any of that on this site, you've got a mess, a real potential for accidents, and a lot of unease, a lot of unease. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sir.
My name is Chase Clement. I live on Elm Avenue in Takoma Park. This is my first time being involved with any of this, so I wanted to make the most of it. I want to start, first of all, by saying that it strikes me that there's not that much money that that's at stake here in some sense. I mean, $2.5 million in today's world is not a great sum when you're talking about an impact on a region that I think something like this is going to have on the Takoma Park area. I am a builder, and I design and build a project here in Takoma Park, and I'm struck by the words that are coming to me are environmentally inept design here. There's an awful lot of paving and impervious surface in what's being presented here, and who benefits from it? I mean, again, this $2 million is being spoken as the maximum financial benefit that this public entity, or quasi-public entity, the transportation system, could realize it kind of if everything went right. And it sounds like they're prepared to receive practically nothing. So I'm just wondering, I have two questions, one of them a little more dramatic than the other one, but the first one is, has the city investigated taking EYA's place in a development role? I know it's not within the boundaries of Takoma Park. And the second question, the more dramatic one, is, has the city considered annexing this property?
Thank you.
If only.
Ms. Scribner?
Hello. My name's Megan Scribner, and I live over on Willow Avenue. And I appreciate all the things the city has done with the resolutions through the years. The words reject, disapprove, oppose, concern are, I think, are appropriate in terms of the AYA plan. And all the problems with the design that made you choose those words still exist. As Suzanne Ludlow outlined, there are those problems that she outlined and many, many more with this. And since these still exist, we need you to challenge this at every step of the way, in every way possible. This means much more than working with EIA, because we've found through the years that working with them means really nothing at all. You know, that they aren't open to suggestions, they aren't open to having parts of this on the table, even to be negotiated. So I would really encourage you all to vigorously oppose this in any way possible. I think the community has proven that we can turn out for direct action and for these sort of things and all sort of things that we can plan together and work with you, but we need to have you working vigorously on this, that this is really very important to the community, to the transit needs of the site, and to just the quality of life here in Takoma Park. So I really ask you all to vigorously oppose this in any way possible, and we will meet you at every spot, meet you and work with you at every stop of the way to make this go away. So please.
Thank you. So I saw your hand, ma'am. I want to make sure that everyone else who hasn't spoken already gets a chance. Commissioner Wheeler. We will have time for follow-up questions if everyone else has had their first shot.
Thank you. I'm Faith Wheeler, Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner in single-member district, about an eighth of a block from the property of WMATA. I simply want to reinforce a couple of the ideas that have been, well, actually many of the ideas that are expressed here, and just highlight how incredibly flawed this proposal is. From the basic view of safety, what is more important than safety? Starting out with that, incredibly flawed. Just one of the examples of the lady in front pointed out. It is flawed from the environmental point of view, which this gentleman, the builder, pointed out. It is flawed from the transit-oriented development point of view. This, every which way you look, it is flawed. Yes, it's close to the metro station, but that benefit is completely wiped out by the flaws. So the textbook idea of, yes, you must build next to the metro station, therefore it's good, doesn't hold. Simply doesn't hold water. And actually, holding water is what we want the ground to do, not be built upon, so that that doesn't occur. So I urge you to indeed keep that in mind. I think we've been bamboozled. I really do. We have been told, as Commissioner Green pointed out, and as others have said, that this is a done deal. I heard that first when I first started working on this in 2001, and folks tried to discourage me from doing anything in my neck of the woods in D.C. But it's not something you give up on. You have to make it clear, very clear, what it is that's flawed, what it is that will not work, will not benefit. The only benefit will come to the developer who will come in and go out. And I've been told that a few times. I've been told also by a high official in the D.C. government, it seems to be just going forward on principle now, principle because they don't want to move back. And as long as people sort of are not forceful, they'll keep getting away with what they're getting away with. And the losers will be us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, I see your hand in front. Sir, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm Ann Juneau from Glenside Drive. And when we started this discussion 10 years ago, one of the justifications for building the townhouses had to do with not only money, but the potential development of the area, economic development. Since then, there have been there have been a set of apartments that have gone up right across the metro, and there has been a set of condominiums. Each one must have contributed some impact to the environmental issues, to the traffic flow, and so forth. So the sands have shifted in 10 years. I'm still hearing the same arguments, but is there anything you can tell us that we could use from now these two projects that have been completed and the additional people around the metro station now living there that we can bring to bear in our defense?
Thank you.
Just there is one answer to that, and that is that even in the information that we submitted to WMATA, we did look at what the Takoma Central District Plan, which is the comprehensive plan for the area, called for housing construction, number of units that they would like to have in the area, and it's about to the level. So one of the arguments that we did make was that they've succeeded in providing adequate housing at that location. So I just wanted to indicate that we can compare what the comprehensive plan calls for the neighborhood in terms of housing demand.
All right, sir.
Hi, my name's Larry Silverman. I live on Birch Avenue. So many good things have been said. I would encourage you to expand your range of issues to include the environment. And I think the reason for that is that Takoma Park actually has credibility on the environment, more so than on transportation. In transportation, you're going up against WMATA, they're the professionals. But if you talk about environmental issues, stormwater, other things, I think the city has a lot of credibility, perhaps more than it deserves, but you have it, and I think you should use it. And the second comment I would like to make is about a strategy. It sounds like there's been a lot of careful thought about a legal strategy, and I thought the comments about the Board of Zoning Appeals and so forth were right on point, and I agreed with them entirely. But I think I have seen in the government relations area, I've heard a lot of effort, but at least from the discussion tonight, I have not seen a strategy worked out with the same care and deliberateness that you are working out your legal strategy. And I think we're in Washington, D.C., the land of the lobbyists, and I think a better job could be done. I'm not sure it could be done right here in public, but a better job could be done in developing a government relations strategy using particularly their federal delegation and getting to them through the state legislators and getting to the governor than has been done. And I think you might want to pursue that with the same care and energy that you put into developing a legal strategy. I think it might be cheaper and more effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
My name is Eileen Sobek. I live on Carroll Avenue. And I agree with almost everything that's been said here tonight, including the fact that we have to have a broad-based strategy and that we have to press forward on a legal strategy, and it has to be done by the city because that's the entity that has the most resources and the most credibility with other jurisdictions. And I think that what you're hearing here tonight is that, yet again, for the second, third, fourth, multiple times, many, many people in the community have turned out and that their support hasn't been dented, even though there have been these substantial setbacks. And I do think that, if anything, people's moral outrage has been compounded by the fact that we have been ignored. And I think that many times legal challenges, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a lawyer, that are taken more seriously than other kinds of challenges, and that we have to that what you're hearing here tonight is there hasn't been a diminution in support of the citizens of Takoma Park to go forward and fight this at the city level with all means available, and that includes the legal means with the city.
Thank you. This gentleman, Ms. Barron.
I'm Buddy Daniels.
and I've lived in the city since 1951. Now you know how old I am. In the 70s, I was part of the committees that spoke with LaMotta. Promises were made. Suzanne's probably discussed this, but that was going to stay a green area. It was going to stay the way it was forever. 10 years ago, we started hearing about this, and I have to say, what's going on? What good is a promise? I don't know anymore. Secondly, I'm on the Public Citizen Safety Advisory Committee. I do not represent the committee tonight or their opinion, but this is my personal opinion. Being on the committee, I've gone up there and looked at the traffic, and everyone who's talked about public safety is so right. Go look at it now. And you want to put 80 townhouses up there and 150 more cars? Come on. It's a mess now. And it's going to be so unsafe at that point in time, no matter how you do it. And obviously, the strategy of working together, we're going to have to work together. I know the council's been enthusiastic about this, and so has the community. Obviously, I may be a little enthusiastic about this. I thought this was a done deal 37 years ago. Guess I was wrong. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barron, ma'am.
I'm Sabrina Barron, the president of Historic Takoma. I choose to live in Takoma Park and to pay the highest taxes in Montgomery County for the privilege. And I personally would love to see my tax money go into something like fighting this fatally flawed project that's going to have a huge detrimental impact on our community. You've offered a package of information tonight that includes seven resolutions passed by Takoma Park City Councils on this project. You've got a room full of people at short notice on a rainy night who have a lot of energy. My organization has been involved in this for a lot of years. I've been involved in this for a lot of years. There's been a lot of direct action. I've been out there carrying a picket sign in front of the metro entrance. I've been out there flyering cars in that parking lot. I've been handing out postcards at the farmers market. I've been having meetings with legislators and officials. This is something that, as far as I can tell, a majority of people in this community cannot live with, do not want. There has been no process. Takoma Park has been denied a seat at the table over and over and over again. Somebody asked the question, who's going to benefit from this? EYA, a private developer. That's who's going to benefit from us. We're going to be inconvenienced in the short run, and we're going to be inconvenienced in the long run. And what's going to happen? You know, we're already at projected, what is it, Faith, 2012 levels of development in this neighborhood, and more is going to come. If you know what's going on in the Red Line corridor, if you know about 2,000 dwelling units that are going in on North Capitol, right across the state line, it's going to be a problem for the future. And nobody is thinking that far out. It's what I said a while ago. People are thinking right now about that jingle in their pocket, which there might not even be. This project is going forward through inertia. It's going forward to protect close sweetheart relationships between politicians, political entities, and developers. Montgomery County and Maryland don't want to upset EYA about this project because they want them to do something in PG County. That's the bottom line. It's deals. It's quid pro quo. It's what it's all about. And this community has got to stand up and take a stand for itself. The citizens and the government in this community have got to do that. Kathy's absolutely right. We're stronger together. And we've had a lot of success. We've made a lot of progress in the past couple of years on this issue for that very reason. And I urge you tonight to sustain that relationship, sustain that momentum, and stay strong on this issue. Because if you're not strong on it, we're lost. We're all lost. We really, really need you, and we need your strength on this issue.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Abbott Young. I live on Holly Avenue. And I just want to support what Mr. Daniels said about 37 years ago thinking this was a done deal, because I was on that Citizens Advisory Committee to the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission when this first arose, even before the subway was built, and we were promised a perpetual park. It went to not the district, but the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, the Montgomery County Planning, the committee, the planning staff supported the limited development or no development plan. They were given many options, including things that looked just like this. We had the support of MNCCP and also the Montgomery Council. So this is a historical matter. It goes way back. It has deep roots. And it's not just the last 10 years. It goes back 37 years. And some of us have been fighting it one way or another the whole time. I felt at the time that this was an issue that I was willing to get arrested on if necessary. I still feel that way today. I very much support all of the avenues that we can collectively pursue, administrative, governmental. God only knows we built a great support from the Maryland delegates. It was, as Mayor Williams mentions, ignored. It was a terrible thing. More arrogance from WMATA, more of a reason to expose their undemocratic processes in violation of the public trust, especially since this land was taken through the public process. There were private homeowners who gave up their homes through eminent domain. We have a lot of different issues and a lot of different things are at stake with this. If you're taking private donations, I will contribute $500 out of my pocket. I'll get some matches, anything I can do to support this. It's, to me, it's more than, every day I take the Metro and I think of two things when I go there. One is how hard it is to walk as a pedestrian and how dangerous and how bad the prospect of more density will be in terms of also crime, which is very rarely discussed, but pedestrian safety. And I work in Silver Spring and I deal with that mix of buses and foot traffic every day and cars, and it's a real problem, and it's going to get worse because they're going to build a 4-story bus bay that's going to look like Port Authority in New York there. If you think we have problems here, you should see what they have designed for Silver Spring. So there are many different ways that we can and should fight this, and it is not a done deal. I mean, when my dad, Sam Abbott, fought the freeway and probably saved the homes that most of us in this room live in, they said it was a done deal, but it wasn't a done deal. And we had the Three Sisters Bridge butting out there, sad and as a testament to this misbegotten plan that developers often make in violation of the public trust. And at the core of the public trust, I think we hold certain issues. And as Larry said, the environment is very much one of them. It is a green space. It's the last green space we have. So I support you. I'll support you financially if that's something that can be done, and in terms of citizen action, in terms of working, as I did in the past, with the elected officials who came forward and were ignored. But we have other avenues. As I said, in Maryland, we have a history. It goes way back, but we can FOIA some of those documents, and some of us have done a search, but we can continue searching for the documentation necessary that we stand on. But I stand, my truth in this matter is the same one that it was 37 years ago when we were promised a perpetual green space and a buffer. Thank you.
Thank you. This gentleman here. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Steve Shapiro. I live on Willow Avenue. I was a founding member and the very first vice president of the Old Town Residents Association with President Wolfgang Mergner. Moved to Takoma Park actually with the assistance, guidance of Sammy Abbott in 1980. I feel that I am partly responsible for the mess, for EYA and this development. Why? I was at some of the early meetings 10 years ago. I was appalled. These people are doing terrible things. They are arrogant. On and on and on. All true. People in public life, even in Takoma, let alone in the district, some were not up to the task, some were dreadful, some were great. But why do I feel responsible is because I'm a member of a community that in our prevailing culture, we are used to mouse clicks, we are used to remote clicks, and we're used to a Republican type of government thinking. Let them do it for us rather than let us unite and do it together. The activism of those in our community and the good leadership where we have had it from our city and other officials has been great. But as many people are in this room now, think if there were a celebrity, how many thousands of people would be lining up outside to get an autograph of so-and-so and such, or the right type of giveaway. Think of what the Boy Scout pancake supper gets every year. How do they get the people there? They have organization, they are methodical. Now, people have worked here. This is not to, but people can really burn themselves out. But as a community, we, on this issue, are really not together. I remember in this very room back in the 80s, as a former resident of Philadelphia Avenue, I worked with a number of my current neighbors and with Bruce Moyer, who had lived on Philadelphia. There were plans. The state was going to widen Philadelphia Avenue. And in a matter of months, we had a meeting. I don't know if there was over 100, 125 people. Delegate Franchot, Senator Ida Reuben were here, et cetera, et cetera. We were able to stop it. I think many of the comments are great, but direct action, political lead, every front is worth doing. But if we do not succeed in organizing ourselves on the grassroots level as a community, we are not really exercising our full strength. I'd like to make a comment about WMATA, that not only have they been terrible, I'll close in a minute, but the way that we don't even make an issue of the terrible way that the metro system is operated. Most of these people don't ride it. Our station, you can see vomit, cigarette butts, graffiti, crime, all these things. It's a dangerous place. People get wheeled out on gurneys because the tiles are not compliant with the architectural standards. We need to, if we are going to succeed in using our full strength, we as a community have to recognize that our neighbors, especially the ones who have not turned out, do not turn out, and never turn out, must turn out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, I see your hand. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken yet who would like to speak? Ma'am, and then Ms. Pearsall.
Bevi Chagnon from Holly Avenue, and I too was brought here by Sam Abbott 20-some-odd years ago. I've been working with him for decades before that. And one of the things that Sam told me was about the park, the open space being in perpetuity. And that's from him directly, and it's from his notes about all this process that we went through 30-some-odd years ago. I think we have to honor that. And I have two questions for our guests up here at the front. And the first one is, what happened to the argument that this entire process has been really undemocratic and, in my mind, illegal? If it was duly given to us, the people, or agreed that it would be a park, what right did WMATA have to 10 years ago, in secrecy, basically, turn around and take that land away from us? What right did it have to decide what to do with that land? I believe it's our right, the people's right. The people of Takoma Park, Maryland, and the people of Takoma, D.C. Sorry, I didn't mean to put the park in there, D.C., guys. It's us, our people's land, and it's our right to decide whether it stays as is or it gets developed into something else, not WMATA's. So what happened to that legal strategy that we talked about 10 years ago when this started? What right did WMATA have to take and do this to begin with? The second one is, what price are we as citizens here willing to pay for democracy? Because that's what's at stake here. Our democratic right to control our city, our town, our green space, our whatever, our environment. What price are we willing to cough up and do that? And I'm willing to put money in with Nancy Abbott next to me here to contribute and privately fund or help subsidize this. That's how important it is. I'm a democratic patriot in my mind, and I don't want this as a precedent to go on in the Washington, D.C. area or nationwide. There is a movement nationwide. to counter the wholesale fire sale of our public properties. And I just read an article within the past month about this, and I'm trying to find it online again, and I will, if I find it, I will provide it to you all. But the people are up in arms about this. What's happening with WMATA selling this and basically getting 0 cents for it is insane. It's not the way that we should be running our country and our local jurisdictions. These developers need to pay going prices, going rates for this land. As a government contractor, I travel around the country. I'm on these properties, decommissioned air bases, et cetera, around the country. And I can't tell you how many times I'm on a piece of property that's maybe 100, 200 or more acres in size, prime land in a central area, sold for a pittance, $1 million at best. And these developers are turning them into multi-million-dollar gated communities. There's no money going back to the taxpayers, the local ones or us federal taxpayers on that. We need to fight and stop this. Not only should Takoma Park be a leader in pioneering and holding up our environmental rights, but also holding up our rights to the land that it not be sold.
Thank you. I heard there was the first question about that legal strategy. Is there any response to that at this time? Okay.
That's one of the things this meeting is for, is to get a sense of which are the issues to fight on. And again, the tradition over the last few years has been to focus very intensively on the transit issues. And if the community wants a focus on environment or land issues, we want to, I think that's part of the question here.
I think the question, though, was about the keeping that a park in perpetuity. Did we ever consider legal action in that regard, and if not, why not? I think was the question.
You're referring to, as you say, violation of the original agreement. So,
and my best answer is nobody has been able to find any written agreement.
And maybe that there's a distinction between a political argument, because we do feel that that agreement has been breached, and whether we have a legal argument, which would primarily depend upon some land records.
I'm Lorraine Pearsall. I'm with Historic Takoma, and it's music to my ears to hear the previous speaker talk about saving the green space, and because that's really where this whole thing began almost 10 years ago when Joel and I got out there and learned about this development and started to oppose it. In those days, we couldn't find a single politician who cared one bit about saving the green space. And I'm going to say our county government was actually pretty bad in those days. We tried. I will tell you, we beat the halls in Rockville. Could not get any interest whatsoever in saving that green space. And it's interesting to me to see it come full circle now. I do think it is important to say that I think that that site is really small. It's unbelievable to give it away, to develop it. We have the future to worry about. That land is very important to us, and it is very unwise to be giving it away to a developer in the way in which they're doing it. I think you have a moral imperative to actually move strongly forward to fight this development. You have 7 resolutions here. I don't think you really need any more resolutions, to be very honest with you. I heard some folks say, let's do the D.C. process. Well, let me just tell you something about the D.C. process. Mr. Fenney is running around replacing all the zoning commissioners and all HPRB, the historic district commissioners, as we speak. He wants this. He wants this. It's become an ego thing. I'm sorry to say, but it is true. And so I don't really have much hope for any kind of D.C. process. The D.C. Planning Office has not had its Clarksburg yet. It needs it. It needs reform very badly. So again, I will say to you that I do not see relief in going through that process. But let me talk to you a little bit about a well-timed lawsuit and what that might do to knock EYA off kilter and to knock WMATA off kilter. Because as people have pointed out, there's not a lot of money here that this is based on. A well-timed lawsuit
done to be the most painful place to do it for EYA could slow this project down and actually perhaps make people think a little bit about the wisdom of developing this property. I am a taxpayer. I've been fighting this dang project for almost 10 years now, and it is time for you now to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Simpson, sir, I saw your hand. This gentleman had a quick question for clarification. He said he has a survey. He said, where do you put them? If you have any surveys or evaluations, please put them on the front desk as you go out.
Right, there's an envelope that says Tacoma Metro Survey. You can just put them in the envelope.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Chris Simpson. I live on Cedar Avenue, and I want to thank you for having this forum for us tonight. I just wanted to say that to some of you, I handed out a yellow flyer when you entered. I'm sorry I don't have enough for everybody, but that's good. I had 50 flyers, so maybe we have more than 50 people. And I wanted to explain what it was. This flyer is a kind of a copy of a flyer that a group I'm associated with, some of these people are here in Maryland, D.C., Neighbors for Tacoma Transit. We handed this out in the fall to try and encourage people to write postcards. You may remember the yellow postcards if you got them, to send them to our elected representatives. We did D.C. people and for Maryland people. And we also listed for people a number of the concerns that we'd identified with the proposed EYA plan. I'm going to point one of them out before I sit down. But what I want to say right now is none of those problems has been resolved in the approval of the EYA plan. In other words, they're all still out there. And they're important problems. They're significant. I can name a number of them. You know, there's some very tangible ones like not enough bus bays for future expansion. It's a transit station, people. And people are going to be taking the bus up there long after we're gone. And I think it's our responsibility to preserve the space for that principally. I'm not against all possible development at the site, but I think that really must come first. And so what I want to tell the council, if you're interested in, you know, how forcefully should you fight, I think you should fight hard. I think the list is the same as it has been. And I hope that you will take all the opportunities. Litigation has been brought up. That sounds like a possibility. And we all know that we still have bites at the apple with the FTA process and the PUD process. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, it's on this flyer, is that in case some credibility is needed in some of the points we made, many elected officials, Chris Van Hollen and others, put a lot of work into, their staffs devoted a lot of time to the issue, and they wrote strong and persuasive letters for us. And I hope that that demonstrates that there is, you know, serious interest in the shortcomings of this plan, not just by a group of nutty Tacoma Park people, but by the people we elect to represent us. So I hope that means something. If I can, I want to show something on the drawing up here. May I, very briefly? What I just wanted to show was that, Suzanne's more of an expert at this than I am, but when you talk about the transit problems in the EYA plan, and a lot of us are kind of familiar with this, but just to get your bearings here, this is the tunnel to the elevator. That doesn't change, so everybody knows where you are if you look at that tunnel. Right now, when you drop people off at the Kiss and Ride, you pretty much do it right here. It's not a very long walk to get to the Kiss and Ride. One of the proposed Kiss and Rides in the EYA plan is over here. And as you may or may not know, there's also a plan to put a fence here so pedestrians won't endanger themselves by walking across the bus bays. So if you get dropped off here at this Kiss and Ride, your walk is going to be down here, if the EYA plan thing ever gets built, and you're going to come across the street, and then you have to go back up in here to the Metro. It's a long and inconvenient walk with your suitcase or whatever you've got through all this stuff. In my mind, it's much less attractive, much less sensible. It doesn't enhance the effectiveness of a mass transit plan, which is one of the standards that is used to evaluate it. And so it doesn't improve the transit function of the station. That's one small example, and there are many, of why this plan, I think, is flawed. Thanks.
Thank you. Sir.
Hi, I'm Lex Ulibarri. I am a District of Columbia resident and part of Friends of Tacoma Transit and Historic Tacoma. I really represent Friends of Tacoma Transit here tonight. It is very difficult for us all to keep our righteous indignation fired up. And we're looking to you as leaders of a community that's directly impacted by this site. The list of flaws that are represented in the current proposal are numerous. We are all aware of them. The cross-circulation of handicapped access, buses, cars, it's a nightmare. I feel like that we're sitting here in Hans Christian Andersen's story screaming, the emperor has no clothes. To keep asking the same question over and over again, expecting a different answer when you've been directed by the community. If we had more impact on our egotistical mayor, we'd be picketing his office too. I mean, we're all prepared to go handcuff ourselves to the trees, do whatever we need to show the city of Takoma Park that this cannot happen. And the point where we are protesting in front of their sales office is too late. We'll already have a giant smoking hole there, mud boots being passed out for us to get to the transit station for 2 years. There's no way this project is ever going to be successful. It's already a built-out community. We need to preserve our green space. We need to preserve our transit station. There's been alternative designs put out there in the community that show a win-win scenario. If they have to build on this site, do it where there already is hardscape. We've actually even shown that the footprint of the buildings that they have proposed can be placed on a platform that fits on the existing parking lot if you get rid of all of their driveways and two-car garages, which is the counterintuitive idea that's been talked about. And it's like we're sitting here with an elephant in the room and nobody's talking about the real sort of counterintuitive idea that was put out there to begin with, just because one developer builds one kind of product that they should be allowed to move forward. We need to stay focused as a community and stay directly involved with the process and continue in whatever avenue, and whether it's direct protest, whether it's filing litigation. I kind of think that we should have filed litigation the day after WMATA forfeited their own procedure and illegally passed this project to be sold to begin with. That would have gotten some attention. Lorraine is absolutely right. A well-timed filing of a lawsuit is just as effective as whether or not we have an analysis that says we're going to win it. And I'm afraid by the sort of leaning of this survey that was passed out that there's going to be, we're going to be here again in 2 months because somebody's going to go through this survey that was biased to begin with and say, oh, well, this is what people said. Of course they don't want to pay more taxes. Nobody wants to when they're asked that question. So if we're going to continue to move forward as a focused community with the reputation that we have as a community that takes care of ourselves, then we need to do that we stop asking the same question. Let's do this, and let's get together and organize ourselves with direct action, legally, confrontationally, and continue forcing the hand of WMATA, which is a cross-jurisdictional organization. So we have every right to do that from the Maryland side as well. Thank you.
Thank you. A quick housekeeping note. This clock is running about 3 minutes fast. So, again, a reminder of the ground rules. We will keep the meeting open as long as everybody who hasn't yet had a chance to speak has that chance. Once we go past 8:30, though, there's not going to be time for follow-up comments in addition. I believe that many of the people here would feel available for a little discussion afterwards, but once we get past 8:30 and the first time comments have concluded, then we will adjourn. So anyone else who hasn't spoken yet who would like to? Okay. Ma'am, give you 1 minute for a follow-up comment.
Actually, this was going to be my first presentation. I have a present for you. I made a binder, Takoma Park Metro, Autumn and Winter 2007 Views of Land Proposed to be Replaced by Townhouse Development. I'd like to donate this binder of about 20 photos of the land around the Takoma Park Metro. It's not a large parcel of land, but thousands of people go through it every day, running to catch a bus or make a transfer or board a train. I offer it as a memorial to this patch of green shown in its autumn splendor and its winter glory, because, as we all know, you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Thank you. Mayor.
I'd like to just offer one informational comment. Now, don't shoot the messenger here. People have said, well, what is EYA getting out of it? What is WMATA getting out of it? What they say they're getting out of it is not the money. They say what they're getting out of it is additional people using transit. And the people in Historic Tacoma who have heard this many times before and feel the same way I do about that thought. But I think it's important if we're doing lobbying, to know that we have to address the questions that are in people's minds. And one of the questions that's going to be in people's minds if you're lobbying is that WMATA is doing this to increase transit ridership. Suzanne did a very excellent analysis of the numbers that EYA is using to make the argument that they're increasing transit ridership, and WMATA is, I don't remember who supported the analysis. I think people should get a copy of that, because and that ought to be part of what we say when we go to people and send letters and point out that this isn't increasing. It's not making money, but it's also not increasing transit ridership, because Suzanne did a very good analysis of their numbers, which don't show what they say they're going to show.
Thank you.
People know that on our city website, which in the contact information has the link to our Tacoma Metro information. We have the information on the financial analysis. We have even a video of what Chris was showing about how difficult it is to traverse the site. You can, follow along with the little car, the whole bit. So we do have a lot of information if people want to go back and get some of the data before they talk with other people.
Thank you.
Thank you. On one level, everything we're talking about is very serious. On another level, there's really a lot of foolishness here in what's being proposed and all. And on that level, I guess maybe because it's late, I propose mud wrestling. Our mayor against Mayor Fenty. With Goldie Hawn as our referee.
No lack of drama. Sir, ma'am.
I'll second that. You've got enough information, I think, today about all the different issues that are wrong with this. And I think concentrating on things like the mixture of traffic of buses and cars, which is a violation of WMATA's own policy. I mean, that's very, very obvious. If you talk about ridership and more people, we know where the development is happening in this area. On the west side of the metro, we know that by CVS we're soon going to have going to be a lot more people. Ask yourself, where's green space for these people to hang out in this immediate area? It's where it is now, and if it goes, we won't have any.
Thank you. Ma'am, 1 minute.
Just very quickly, and I'm not a tax attorney, but I do want to let you know I've done my own research on this, and donations to a local government and donations to Historic Tacoma are all tax deductible.
Ma'am, and this will be our last comment. The clock says we do.
Okay. I just want to say I hear a consensus tonight. We are together on this, and we are empowering you, and we will back you up to sue them on this. We will back you up in leading us in direct action, and I think you are us. You are elected leaders. You can get arrested with us. You can do direct action with us. You can sue, and we will back you up, and we'll even contribute to the city to do this. And I'm also suggesting that we may have a PR strategy, because we do need direct action, litigation. We need the negotiations. We won't get anywhere unless we do these other two things, which really put the heat on, turn the heat up, and maybe actually do a lot more expose of really the dirty underbelly of this thing, and really put that out there in the paper and embarrass that D.C. mayor and those other folks, because actually the DC taxpayers are really getting screwed by this too, and we really have to expose this. But thank you for your leadership. I know we had to get our energy up again. It's been a long fight. You've been fighting it. Fight again. Fight hard. We're with you.
We're still in the last minute. We've had a volunteer to close out with one last comment.
Buddy Daniels again, and I just want to say that I want to thank the council and everybody up there for their concern, and thank the audience. Thank Chris Simpson. Chris, I've forgotten your last name. Chris Simpson, which was her maiden name. I've known Chris for a long time. Someone who has a family member and has a park named after their family member, Opal Daniels, was my mother, and it was about open space. Certainly safety, and safety is something I've dedicated myself to, but it's about open space, and it is an open space, and we just can't afford to lose it. There's not that much open space left anymore, and it's such a beautiful site. So thank everybody for your enthusiasm, and as an activist, and an organizer, I'll help any way I can to organize. Thank you again.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I want to, right now we're at adjournment time. I want to just do a few quick housekeeping notes. If you've got your survey or your evaluation form, please leave it on the table as you go out. I want to thank everybody for participating tonight. This has been a very constructive evening, and I think the responses have been very responsive to the mission that was laid out by the council here at first. I know we're all here. Commissioner Wheeler, and then we're going to wrap it up.
I also have a donation to the council, prepared basically by Friends of Tacoma Transit. It's a binder. Some of you have seen some of the documentation in it. I'll just quote you one of the statements here, which I think is relevant to Takoma Park, D.C. and Maryland, and relevant to what we don't want to happen. A place indistinguishable from any other place has no competitive advantage. A someplace with no differentiation becomes an any place, and the distance between an any place and no place is short indeed. Mr. Ripkema.
And with that, we adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, and good night.